Hey, my name's Shaun. I'm a former British soldier and Ukrainian Marine, and today we're going to be talking about mercenaries.
Johnny's number three. Johnny, ебать! Пул, да? Пина, да. Пина!
It's Ukraine's territory. Ukraine should be trying to win it back, as far as I'm concerned. Russia used the word mercenary in part of their disinformation campaign, well, basically to win this war. We need to really look at the start of what is a mercenary. I was personally captured in the battle for Mariupol, put on a trial by public opinion, where I was literally pumped out to the Russian news as being a mercenary, while not actually setting foot outside the country I had legal status in. Those 2 or 3 months after my capture give Russia the ability to pump out a narrative to justify their war in Ukraine, while invading Ukraine with Nazi paramilitaries and Nazi, I would say, run private military contractors, which are indeed mercenaries, not a part of the military, made up from all walks of life and from people from all over the world. But let's look at, before we jump down that, let's look at the definitions of mercenary. The Geneva Conventions do not directly define mercenary. However, Protocol 1, additional to the Geneva Conventions of 1949, which was adopted in 1977, does provide a definition in Article 47. According to this article that I pulled off online, a mercenary is considered to be a person who is especially recruited locally and abroad in order to fight in an armed conflict. Let's look at my background first, just in that number one rule. My background is I was working in the Ukrainian military long before the full-scale invasion. Like I said, I had a wife here, residency, I had legal status. I actually never set foot outside the country. I didn't topple a European government, a democratically elected government. So really, just on that number one rule, just for myself, where I was dragged through and given the death penalty as a Nazi mercenary and a terrorist, really I don't fit that bill. One, I was part of the regular military, part of a democratically elected government. I was literally, like I keep saying, never set outside the country I had legal status in, paid my taxes in Ukraine, uh, trained with the Ukrainian military. I was essentially spent more time over the last 5 years, 6 years in Ukraine than I ever did at home. So, in this day and age, many people are not necessarily living in the countries they were born in. So, just on that first rule, really, I don't think I fit in that bracket. I was actually inside the country, never left. I wasn't from abroad. I had legal status here, and I was recruited locally, yes, but I was recruited into the military, which is the government's military, which we'll come into a bit later on. Does in fact take part in the hostilities. Well, I did. I was a part of the local. I can't argue with rule number 2. 3. Is motivated to take part in the hostilities essentially by the desire for private gain and, in fact, is promised by or on behalf of a party of conflict material compensation substantially in excess, quite important, of that promised or paid to combatants of similar ranks and functions in the armed forces of that party. Doesn't apply to me. 3. I was part of the Ukrainian military. I was in the rank structure of the Ukrainian military. I had literally the same pay as everybody else. If you want to say that enriching myself for less than $400 a month is gain, I could probably work in a job minimum wage in the UK. And that would be my argument against that. And I would probably get more than I was getting in the Ukrainian military. I didn't come here specifically for the money. Even though we did get some compensation, we got paid a salary, and out of that we had to live, food, rent. Under $400? I don't think so. Number 4 is neither a national of a party to the conflict nor a resident of the territory. Well, I've already said to you I am a resident. I'm not going to bother finishing that. I have legal status here. I was married to a Ukrainian for 2 years. My family are essentially Ukrainian. Number 4 doesn't even reach that. Is not a member of the armed forces of the party to the conflict. Number 5. I am a member of the armed forces of the party. What it's referring to there is people like Rusich group that Russia invaded Ukraine with, Nazi paramilitaries. What it refers to there is private military contractors. I wasn't a private military contractor in any capacity. So when you hear Russians talk about mercenaries captured, you really ought to look at that and think, hold on a minute. No, you invaded a European, a democratically elected government inside Europe and invaded with private military contractors and paramilitary groups. Russia is projecting what it's actually doing and using disinformation and stigma. Hence, I was put on a public trial and spouted around as being a mercenary. I still get called it now by the British press, which is absolute garbage. And number six, has not been sent by the state, which is not party to the conflict on official duty as a member of its armed forces. Well, that doesn't apply to me either because I never left the country. I had legal status in, and I was part of the government and the military. So we keep going over those same sorts of topics. This is a massive disinformation campaign. Even the British media don't understand what the definition of a mercenary is. So even I was referred to by certain media outlets as a soldier of fortune. That, if you're captured, can get you killed because your own government, your own papers are projecting you as a mercenary, which is far from the truth. There is a bodicum, there is a grey area. All these rules as mercenaries, modern day, need to be looked at again because it's not fitting the current climate and the conflict, especially in somewhere like Ukraine, because Russia are bending those rules. They are pulling in people from India, Nepal, Senegal. But what they are doing with the North Koreans is they're bringing another army into Europe, hiding them within the numbers of the Russian military, giving them false documents. They'll probably still be North Korean, but generally, Russia is abusing that system. That's something that we really need to look at and talk about more. I mean, Ukraine is on a defensive footing, so it really is going to, do anything it can to defend its sovereignty. At the end of the day, Ukraine isn't the aggressor. Russia is coming in, wanting to stabilize the government, take over the country, using any means, by any means it can, through from convicts, through to private military contractors, through to paramilitaries. And then when it's capturing a foreigner in the Ukraine, it's just dragging them through the courts, which is totally a sham system, more along the lines of a kangaroo court that's of a military doctrine. You're not classed as a POW. Doesn't matter if you're captured in Russia; they're going to do to you whatever they want. Especially if you're from Britain, America, Denmark, Norway. You really are. If you're lucky enough to get that far without being executed on the front lines, then you really are at the hands of the Russian system, which is corrupt. And having been there myself and not had any representation, been tortured, stabbed in the leg, starved, electrocuted, along with my colleagues. Um, with the use of manipulation, it won't matter because one of the ways they use torture in Russia is to get you to admit to things you didn't do and places you've never been. Torture is exceptionally good at that, which is why you're probably going to have more than likely have to say guilty just to stop the pain from happening eventually. So, the system is what we say bent in London. You don't really want to be captured because you are in the lap of the gods, especially now where, in the last couple of months, the executions have actually increased of Ukrainian POWs by Russia, which is another topic we'll talk about later. But, getting past that first initial capture is the hardest part. So generally, you know, Russia's use of the word mercenary is really just to resonate with the West, which clearly, after 2 years now, we're starting to claw that information war back. I believe, especially with the the exchange of myself and others and other internationals. So I do believe that we're starting to claw that information up, especially with things like, I'm one of a handful of people that lived in, you know, East Ukraine and Donetsk Oblast considerably a long time before the full-scale invasion. I'm married to Ukrainian, so generally I'm able to fight those narratives along with many others now who are pushing that and fighting those narratives back to Russia. So yeah, it is changing. It's something we've got to look at. We're certainly not mercenaries. We are Ukrainian soldiers. We've got to get used to saying Ukrainian soldiers. We're internationals, not born here, but we are Ukrainian soldiers, entitled to the same rights as prisoners of war. We shouldn't be singled out, segregated, tortured. We are entitled to that. And like I said, in summary, the only problem you've got is if you're not contracted soldier in Ukraine, you're fighting with a paramilitary or a PMC and you get captured. You are really on the realms of the unknown there. So that's my 2 pennies worth. Thanks for listening. Slava Ukraine.